Deep in Stavropol Krai is a radio plant. That plant is far from innocent. It produces some of the key tools Russia's army uses in its electronic warfare campaign, including equipment that's capable of jamming Ukraine's weapons. Right now, that plant is on fire. It's the latest victim of a long-range Ukrainian drone strike. Ukraine's deep strike has fried the nerve center of Russia's war machine, crippling Vladimir Putin's electronic warfare hub to limit the effectiveness of his electronic warfare campaign. Overnight on July 26th, Ukraine's security service, the SBU, launched a devastating drone strike against one of Russia's most important electronic warfare facilities. The Signal radio plant, which is nestled in Stavropol Krai, about 311 miles away from the nearest Ukraine-controlled territory, was bombarded with a drone strike designed to take out equipment used in Russia's frontline aircraft and by its troops inside Ukraine. The Kyiv Independent provides the basic details. It says the SBU has confirmed the strike, which amounted to a 1-2 punch that has devastated Russia's electronic warfare capabilities. The first attack targeted a building that Russia used to store expensive imported equipment such as computer numerical control machines, the outlet says. This equipment may have also included the dual-use components that China has been selling to Russia. Since Putin launched his full-scale invasion, China has served a crafty double role in the war. On one hand, it calls for peace between the two countries, attempting to portray a country that is concerned about the global impact of the war Putin started. On the other hand, it happily profits from selling dual-use components, which are components that can serve uses for both commercial and military purposes to Russia. On May 20th, Al Jazeera reported that the head of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, Oleg Ivashenko, claims that his team has confirmed that China is providing these components, alongside other materials and equipment, to 20 Russian factories. There is information that China supplies tooling machines, special chemical products, gunpowder, and components specifically to defense manufacturing industries, he said. We have confirmed data on 20 Russian factories. Was the Signal plant among the 20? We don't know for sure. However, we do know that Ukraine targeted a storage facility holding imported parts, indicating that it was either receiving deliveries directly or sourcing them from other factories in Russia that are working in conjunction with China. As for Ukraine's second strike, it targeted a different building that the Kyiv Independent claims played host to an electronic devices workshop. In other words, Ukraine wasn't happy with just taking out the components Russia uses to build its electronic warfare equipment. It has also made it impossible for the staff at the Signal radio plant to assemble those components. It's a 2-for-1 strike. And it's left Russia's nerve center devastated. An unnamed source inside the SBU told the Kyiv Independent precisely what Ukraine hoped to achieve with the July 26th attack. The SBU continues to systematically disable enemy facilities working for the war against Ukraine. Each such attack stops production processes and reduces the enemy's military potential, the source claimed. And if there was any doubt about just how successful Ukraine's strike was, those doubts have been dispelled by the footage that has emerged from the strike zone. The Astra Telegram channel has also reported on Ukraine's attack, noting that the strike caused several small fires that Russia claims have been extinguished. It also provided a pair of videos, both shot by local residents on the ground. The first is the most damning in terms of any Russian attempts to deny that the attack took place. The footage shows a Ukrainian drone on a fast descent toward a Signal radio plant building. The video only lasts for a couple of seconds as the drone soon strikes its target, exploding in a fireball against the side of a building so powerfully that it causes the person filming the drone to scream. A second video showcases one of Ukraine's drone strikes from a greater distance. A drone is seen streaking across the Russian skies, with no sound of air defense going off in the background. That tells us one of two things. Either Ukraine's drones managed to circumvent whatever air defenses Russia had built up around its vital nerve center, or those defenses either aren't there or failed to fire on the drones. Either way, Putin will be humiliated, as the footage shows Ukraine's drone traveling toward its target unimpeded before it descends and, like the first drone, explodes into a massive fireball as it hits its target. Russia simply can't deny that the strike took place in the face of such overwhelming evidence. United 24 Media provides its own report on the strike, stating that it took place at about 5 a.m. local time. Loud explosions and a brief fire were caused at the Signal plant, the outlet says, and Stavropol Krai Governor Vladimir Vladimirov has been forced to confirm that the attack took place. As is so often the case with Russia, there is no confirmation about the scale of the damage the Ukrainian attack caused. Russia doesn't want to reveal that. All Vladimirov said was that there were no casualties, his city's civilian infrastructure was unaffected, and that the fire caused by the attack was promptly extinguished, says United 24. All three claims may be true, but that only goes to show how precise Ukraine's long-range drone strikes have become. It was able to pull off a 1-2 combo against one of Russia's key electronic warfare plants without causing any loss to civilian life or infrastructure. Compare that to Russia's devastating aerial strikes against Ukraine, which have killed 6,754 civilians during the first half of 2025 alone, according to the United Nations in Ukraine. And you have a clear contrast in approaches. Putin targets innocent people. Ukraine attacks the military facilities responsible for building weapons that fuel Russia's war machine. As for the facility that Ukraine struck, United 24 provides some important details. It says that the signal plant was built way back in 1971. It appears to have operated independently for about 4 decades before Putin decided to integrate the factory into the Russian state-owned defense company Rostec in 2012. Since then, the plant has specialized in the production of electronic warfare systems that are used in the Russian military's aircraft, as well as its ground and naval platforms. So it's a vital plant, and both Ukraine and the collective West know it. United 24 says that the plant was among the first that the US, Ukraine, the European Union, and Japan sanctioned back in 2022, when Putin launched his invasion. Those sanctions were supposed to stop Russia from receiving the components it uses to build its electronic warfare equipment. But as we mentioned earlier, China was more than happy to step up and fill the gap caused by the sanctions. As United 24 media points out, the plant has continued operations, reportedly sourcing components through alternative supply chains, including Chinese-manufactured parts. Sanctions didn't do the job of taking out Russia's nerve center. Ukraine decided that a strike was the better solution. Thanks to United 24, we also know what kind of weapons the signal plant is responsible for producing. The outlet names 3, the Topol-E, Smalta, and Gardania systems. All 3 are vital cogs in the electronic warfare machine Putin has created for use in Ukraine. Starting with the Topol-E, Armed Conflict says, this is a ground jamming station that is mounted to a vehicle, making it mobile. It's designed to jam several radar signals including AN/APS-125, AN/APS-138, and AN/APS-139. These are the signals used by the E-2C Hawkeye aircraft, meaning Russia was likely using the weapon to jam signals being provided to Ukraine's drones on the battlefield. The Topol-E works by using noise cancellation technology to jam its targets, the station being capable of working independently or as part of a larger network of electronic warfare equipment. The Topol-E comes in 2 versions. The fully mobile version is mounted to a vehicle and can be transported as needed, as we mentioned earlier. Armed Conflict says that there's also a semi-stationary version that Russia can use to create semi-permanent installations in key conflict zones. It's a smart machine too. The Topol-E can automatically search for and recognize the signals we mentioned earlier. Once it locates a signal, the machine tracks whatever aircraft is receiving those signals and displays the parameters of those signals to its 3 operators. It also automatically chooses the most appropriate jamming methods for those signals, meaning Russia's soldiers really only need to deploy the Topol-E and let it get to work. The system has a maximum interference range of 155 miles, though it's most effective at a range of between 37 and 49 miles, and it takes just 30 minutes to deploy, after which it can operate continuously for at least 24 hours. And now Russia's signal plant won't be able to build any more of them, at least temporarily. Then there's the Smalta. Unlike the Topol-E, the Smalta is an aerial electronic warfare platform that Russia typically installs into its Mi-8 SMV helicopters, according to Key Aero. The first version of the system was developed all the way back in the 1970s by the Kaluga Research Institute of Radio Engineering. Remember that the signal plant has been operating since 1971. The odds are that it's been building Smalta systems for as long as it's been open. That original Smalta system, known as the Smalta-V, was initially designed to counter the guidance systems used by America's MIM-23 Hawk low to medium altitude surface-to-air missile systems. Immediately, that makes it clear why Russia wants to build more Smaltas. Hawk missiles have emerged as one of the best defenses that Ukraine has for countering the hordes of drones that Putin has been launching into the country. The missiles are so effective that the US and Greece have just announced the new multi-million-dollar package to refurbish Ukraine's Hawk systems. You can learn more about that package and what makes that missile so effective in our video. Russia wasn't happy with tackling Hawk missiles alone. It iterated on the original Smalta-V to produce the Smalta-PG, which entered service in 2000. That upgraded system boasts a far wider range of capabilities than its older cousin, as it's now capable of disrupting guidance systems in air, ground, and ship platforms. The Smalta-PG operates on the X-band and can disrupt any radars that work in the 10 GHz frequency, Key Aero reports. It's capable of creating jamming signals across 10 different frequency channels and can operate in 7 directions simultaneously, making it a massive threat to any of Ukraine's missiles and drones. An upgraded version of the Smalta-PG is also able to jam GPS and Russian GLONASS satellite navigation systems, the former of which we know for sure is used by many of the Western-made missiles and weapon systems Ukraine deploys against Russia. Just as with the Topol-E, Russia will be stung by the loss of a facility that produces such a vital component of Putin's electronic warfare campaign. Fewer Smalta systems in Ukraine equate to more successful Ukrainian drone and missile strikes against Russian targets. Finally, there's the Gardania. We don't know as much about this modern system as we do the Topol-E or the Smolta. Russia has been keeping its true capabilities under wraps as much as it can. What we do know comes from a February 2025 report published by VPK News, which says that the Gardenia is a dual container active jamming station that Russia has created to protect its aircraft from both air-to-air and ground-to-air guided weapons. Marketing materials for the defensive weapon were provided at the Aero India 2025 exhibition, VPK says, which it quotes as claiming, "The Gardenia dual container active jamming station was created for individually mutual, as well as group protection of aircraft by interfering with onboard and ground-based radars, as well as radar stations." That doesn't tell us all too much. However, we do know that the Gardenia is carried directly by the aircraft that Russia deploys and is mounted on 2 suspension points. From the deployed aircraft, the Gardenia then generates signals to interfere with the radars of almost any aircraft Ukraine has in its arsenal. VPK reports that Russia claims that the system is capable of adapting to even the most modern aircraft, and that a miniature version of the Gardenia is already being deployed on Russian MiG-29 and MiG-35 aircraft. From its mounts, the Gardenia can interfere with the guidance system of anti-aircraft missiles and artillery systems, as well as air-to-air missiles fired at it by an aerial combatant. In other words, Russia has created Gardenia to keep its aerial platforms safe whenever they're operating in or around Ukraine. No more Gardenias means that Ukraine has a better chance of taking out Russia's aerial platforms and asserting superiority within its own skies. So it's not just a Russian electronic warfare facility that Ukraine took out on July 26th. Ukraine's drones devastated the storage unit where Russia kept components used to build 3 of its most valuable electronic warfare platforms. Plus, the signal plant's warehouse is ruined, meaning that even if those components were untouched, Russia wouldn't be able to build anything with them. All of this would be bad enough for Putin. His nerve center has just been crippled. But to make matters worse for Russia's leader, the strike on the signal plant isn't the only one that Ukraine conducted. Just a day before the signal attack, Ukraine launched an impressive drone raid that took out a facility Russia used to produce explosive chemicals needed for the manufacture of its bombs. United 24 media says that Ukraine targeted the Nevenomysky Azot chemical plant in the Stavropol region of Russia on July 25th. The head of Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation, Andriy Kovalenko, took to Telegram in the wake of the strike, explaining precisely why Ukraine struck the plant. The Nevenomysky nitrogen plant in the Stavropol territory is a manufacturer of chemical raw materials for explosives, in particular nitric acid and ammonium nitrate, Kovalenko explained. It's a key supplier for the production of ammunition, including artillery shells, air bombs, and MLRS. Footage shared by the Exilenova Plus X account reveals that Ukraine's July 25th strike took place at night and that it was extremely effective. One video shows a massive fireball being created by one of Ukraine's drones as it touched down on the Nevenomysky Azot facility, causing smoke to stream into the sky. Another video shared by the channel reveals the sound of Russia's aerial defenses firing and failing to stop Ukraine's drones from hitting their targets. A volley of gunfire is heard, followed by a loud explosion, suggesting a direct hit for Ukraine. What we have here is a 1-2 combo. In 2 days, Ukraine has decimated 2 vital parts of the Russian military supply chain. Here's what all of this means for the Ukraine war moving forward. The most obvious impact of Ukraine's July 26th strike is that Russia is going to have far less access to the jamming equipment it's been using against Ukraine. That's huge for Ukraine. Even back in May 2024, the New York Times was reporting that some of Russia's jamming equipment was powerful enough to send even some of America's best precision-guided missiles off course, making them ineffective on the battlefield for Ukraine. That was a problem. These types of missiles are expensive and in very short supply, meaning Ukraine has to make every single one of them count. Russia's deployment of electronic jamming countermeasures was making those weapons less effective. The impact was enough that an unnamed official inside the US Department of Defense acknowledged it when speaking to the New York Times. "We are very aware of the electronic warfare threat that Russia poses in Ukraine, and that this threat is continually evolving," the official said. As a result, we work closely with Ukraine, along with defense industry partners, to continually assess and provide rapid solutions to these threats, and to help ensure Ukraine remains effective in a very complex EW environment. Ukraine has been countering Russia's electronic warfare by attacking the radar stations and equipment loaded with Russia's jamming equipment. Such was the case in March, when Ukraine's Special Operations Forces distorted a Russian Utyos TM radar. But with the July 26th strike, Ukraine has switched up its strategy to hit Russia's electronic warfare systems at their source, rather than once they're on the battlefield. After all, it's far better to take out the facility that builds these weapons than to expend more ammunition destroying the equipment that uses these weapons once it's out on the battlefield. What the July 26th strike does is put Ukraine one step ahead of Russia on the electronic warfare front. That's vital, as Forbes reporter David Hambling wrote in a March piece in which he claims that Ukrainian lives hang in the balance during what he dubs a deadly electronic warfare arms race. He points out that Ukraine has been deploying vast numbers of jammers and spoofers of its own to prevent Russia from hitting it with its drones, missiles, and glide bombs. By taking out the signal plant, Ukraine has extended the tit-for-tat jamming contest by destroying the very facility Russia relies on to provide so many of its electronic warfare systems. Ultimately, this strike means that more of Ukraine's weapons and countermeasures will hit their targets from now on. Beyond giving Ukraine a leg up on the electronic warfare front, the July 26th strike also reveals something else about Ukraine's strategy. It's focusing as intently as ever before on deep strikes within Russian territory. Ukraine is taking advantage of Russia's massive size to conduct these strikes. United 24 points out that Russia accounts for 11% of the world's landmass at a staggering 6.56 million square miles. While holding onto that much territory is likely a source of pride for Putin, it also creates a problem because a country of this sheer size is incredibly difficult to protect. Russia's air defenses are already stretched thin, thanks to a war that Ukraine's Ministry of Finance says has already claimed 1,201 of Russia's anti-aircraft warfare systems as of July 28th. That stretching creates gaps. It leaves openings for Ukraine's drones and long-range missiles to strike inside Russia's territory with increasing success. What we saw on July 26th was one of the many examples of these deep strikes that have taken place in 2025. And these strikes are costing Russia big, not only in terms of equipment and manufacturing capacity, but also financially. By March of this year, Radio Free Europe was reporting that Ukraine had managed to inflict $714 million of damage against Russia with its deep strikes. That figure was based on a very limited sample size of 100 satellite images covering sites that Ukraine had hit between September 2024 and February 12, 2025. The deep strikes only grew more intense from there. By June 26th, Euromaidan Press was reporting that Ukraine's deep strikes on Russian military targets had cost Putin almost $11 billion between January and May of 2025. About $1.3 billion was accounted for by the direct damage Ukraine has caused to Russia's military and production facilities. However, Euromaidan Press's figures also accounted for indirect costs. Russia had lost $9.5 billion due to shutdowns and supply chain disruptions during the first 5 months of the year. What happened on July 26th only adds to Putin's financial woes. It's yet another in a massive series of deep strikes that Ukraine is using like a dagger plunged directly into the heart of Russia's manufacturing capabilities. Each of these strikes costs Russia money. They limit the effectiveness of Putin's troops on the battlefield, and in the case of the attack at the signal radio plant, to strip away the electronic warfare weapons Russia has relied on so heavily in its invasion of Ukraine. And it's not just manufacturing facilities that Putin has to worry about Ukraine striking. Ukraine is also hitting Russian oil hard. Ukraine just tore out Russia's jugular and is bleeding Russia's oil arteries dry with its deep strike attacks. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more commentary on Ukraine's latest deep strike successes in its defense against Putin's invasion. And thank you, as always, for watching.